Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who is out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Okay, welcome to the podcast. Bob Nickman here. I've got two guests on the show today. Paul Ollinger, who is the host of a brand new podcast himself called Crazy Money, and Mike Carano, who also is the host of a couple of podcasts, not about money, and we'll hear about that in a minute. But I wanted to talk with someone, and Paul is the guy, about health issues around money and how we approach money, what we believe about money. What is money? What is it? How family of origin can influence our attitudes about money. And both Paul and I have kind of counseled Mike on issues that he's had around money. We're going to talk about all that. He's very honest about some of the stuff he's gone through in terms of how to manage his money and what he believes about money. And it's a really cool podcast because we kind of go all over the place. We get into some stuff about advertising and social media, fear around money, all kinds of cool stuff that a lot of people just don't want to talk about. So I'm very excited about this one because it's a little different than some of the other ones I've done. So let's check it out. This is Paul Ollinger and Mike Carano. This is actually my first three-way podcast that I've done on Zoom, and thank you to the good folks at Zoom for allowing that to happen. I don't know if they're good folks, but I like the software. Anyway, I've got Mike Carano, who is the guy that got me into podcasting. So thanks for that, Mike.
My pleasure, man. I'm glad you're doing it.
Yeah, and Paul Ollinger, who Mike also got into podcasting. So Paul has just launched a new podcast about money. And what is the name of that? And tell us what you're trying to do, because that's why we're here today. We're going to talk about money and health around money.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Bob, and hello, Mike. Co-conspirator behind my podcast, Crazy Money. The idea behind Crazy Money is that I want to talk about how money influences our decisions and choices we make in life, for better or for worse, and how I believe we'll make better decisions if we have a more conscious relationship with what we want from money and the role it's going to play in our lives.
I like that, and that's why I wanted to interview you today. And Mike, tell us about your two podcasts that have nothing to do with money, more of a cry for help, I believe.
They're definitely cries for help. Miscellaneous Adventures from the World of Mike Carano, and that's basically self-therapeutic, me walking around being angry at the world and then trying to resolve it while I'm talking into my phone like a crazy person, and possibly Whole Foods, Costco, number of places. Yesterday I recorded 45 minutes in IKEA, and the other one is called The After Disaster, which is just a bunch of nonsensical rambling of three guys, and sometimes it's funny and sometimes it's embarrassing, and that's pretty much my whole life.
I've heard the first one, and I actually enjoy. Maybe it's just because I know you, but I guess a lot of people enjoy it. So if you guys that are listening want to check out Mike Carano's podcast too. But we're here today to talk about money, and I want to start with a quote. I'm buying things I don't need with money I don't have to impress people I don't know. And I think that seems to be a little bit of an issue. I don't know if it's around the world, but certainly in the United States, this materialism that we seem to be addicted to in a way, and it doesn't seem to make people happy, does it, Paul?
It doesn't. I think these are lessons that we hear all our lives, but sometimes it takes running up your credit card bill, your credit card balance so high that you become a victim of your spending, or even if you have a lot of money, going out and spending it on stuff you don't need, and then realizing like, this isn't really making me any happier. The Porsche's not that you can't drive it that much faster practically than you can the Volkswagen. So why go spend all that extra
Whoa,
money?
whoa there, buddy. Back it off.
Now, I have a friend. I was talking to him about money the other day, and his father is some kind of psychologist, and whatever the study was, his father said that there is a correlation between if you have no money and you're really struggling, you're not going to be that happy, just because of that. But after a certain point of having a certain level of income and your needs are met, then the happiness doesn't go up at all. It's just it's just how you perceive things. But once these basic needs are met and a little bit of extra, the difference between that person and somebody who's incredibly wealthy, the happiness factor isn't huge.
Until you get to that point, you hear that statistic and just go, oh, screw you, man. Because there's a whole lot of pain involved with not being able to pay your bills on a month-to-month basis. And I remember when I finally saved some money, the richest I've ever felt is the day I paid off my student loans. Was
nice.
The best financial day of my life. I felt like I was my own person again, as opposed to like, there's not that much difference between, I'm sorry, I'm going to shit on your can we cuss on? Anyway, I'm not going to, we can't. I'm not trying to shit on a Porsche. I'm just saying, and they are very cool, but you get to work with a decent, reliable car. But the day you pay off your credit cards, the day you pay off your student loans, you're like, oh, holy shit, I am not beholden to a third party who's dangling a sword over my head all the time. That feels really good.
Now, Mike, I know that you've struggled with responsibility in terms of paying bills and buying things.
It's the nicest way anyone's ever put it.
Well, it is a struggle.
Yeah, on occasion there's a slight struggle with responsibility.
It's not slight.
No, I know, that's what I'm saying. I'm being sarcastic.
Oh, you're being sarcastic.
Yeah.
No,
every now and then, Bob, I feel a little tinge of blue.
Now, the way I grew up was I had Depression-era parents who were very frugal and managed their money very tightly. They weren't necessarily miserly, but they were very aware. They had a lot of clarity on what was coming in, what was going out, what the priorities were. They discussed it. They kept decent records. They did all that stuff. So I grew up in that kind of a house. So I learned it from a very young age that that's how you approach money. Now, my wife had a very different type of upbringing, and she still sees money differently than I do. And I've learned a lot from her, a little more open idea of spending. But what was your childhood like in terms of money?
There was no teaching as far as money goes, and I still have that lingering in the back of my head that I don't need to do accounting. I don't need to check my bank balance. I don't need to balance my checkbook. I don't need to. It's just it has no worth to me still, even though I've come a long ways. And it's kind of scary because it almost seems like I'm just being hippy dippy about it, like whatever, man. But it is extremely frightening, and the stress, the financial stress at times is, it's blinding. It takes away all of your ambition for everything, because you're just sort of this fight for survival. Like, how am I going to pay this bill this month? And it's just all consuming. Paul said something a bunch of times to me that stuck in my head, which was the best part about having money is not being broke. It really makes sense, because when I try to correlate it with happiness, and other people use the word happy, but does money make you happy? Sometimes I go, they're not even in the same game. But I mean, it's like happiness is one thing, money is a totally different thing, and trying to this just occurred to me, by the way, so I'm glad I'm expressing a really well thought out theory. But
get out of pen, everybody.
No, but we all say, does money make you happy? And I think about that all the time, and I hear other people say, and then I hear people tell me it doesn't make you happy, and this and that. But I don't think it has anything to do with anything. We're searching for something by buying things and trying to fill something and trying to satisfy something. But now I wish I wouldn't have even started this entire theory, because now it's going to be a mess, me trying to come up with something smart to say here. But
you don't have to be smart, just honest.
When you guys were talking earlier about buying the material things to impress somebody that you don't even know, and I understand that aspect of it, but there's even a deeper part of it, which is buying stuff trying to fill something. Because I've bought a lot of material things in my life, and most of them were not to impress other people. It was trying to like satisfy something in me.
Yeah.
because the stuff I bought that would impress other people, frankly, I was a little embarrassed by. Buying an expensive watch, I didn't really do that to impress anybody. I did it because I thought it was going to make me feel good, make me feel better. And it's crazy and illogical thinking in my head, like, oh.
Well, it's the same as drinking or drugs or overeating, and it's all that stuff. It's it fills that void. And I know that's why Paul started his show, to talk about that, those kinds of things. What money has meant, and what does it mean. Money to me is never really about money. It's about security and safety and self-worth and all those kinds of things.
I want to feel safe. I want less fear. And when I think of money, it makes me feel safe. And maybe not even in the most healthy way, because I'm like, if I had money, I could have a house with a wall around it. No, but I mean, I really think that. That's my, it's like I could buy this like armored motorhome and drive out to the middle of nowhere, and then I'm going to feel safe. Or I could sit behind this wall and I'm going to feel safe.
Mike, I mean, like your actions when you're out there spending and, not saving for your tax bill next year and all that, your impulse to feel something with that purchase is actually working against the stated desire to feel safe. I wonder if you actually thrive on chaos, and your financial life is one manifestation of that unspoken desire.
According to my therapist, if you have chaos when you're growing up, it's like a safe place that you just want to return to. And I get that. I do look for chaos, and I think everyone in my family does, because we're always late. We're always, oh, I have 15 minutes to get somewhere. I should leave now. You know what? I think I'm just going to wash the sink first and maybe make some coffee. No, but that's how my family operates.
The familiarity of how you grew up, in
yes.
chaos, feels right to you.
Absolutely, it feels much better than.
Oh, I never heard that before. Yeah, it makes sense. I want to tell a little story here, a true story. It's short, and but it's about perception about money. I had two friends back when I was doing stand-up comedy, and it was after a show on like a Friday or Saturday night, and one said, "Hey, you want to go out and do something?" And the other guy says, "Yeah," and he goes, "Well, you know what? God damn it, I don't have any money." And the other guy goes, "Well, I got a lot." So they said, "All right, well, let's put our money together." And they did, and they each had $20.
Oh, funny.
Each of them had a $20 bill. Now, one guy was not enough to have a great time. The other guy, it was a lot. When I buy something, let me put it this way. When I go to buy something, I ask myself a bunch of questions. And I don't know if this is neurotic or practical or whatever it is, but I'll say to myself, is the price a good price? Do I really need it? Can I wait? What happens if I don't get it? Am I going to be just as happy or not?
What kind of an American analyzes his impulse to purchase things? It's unpatriotic.
It is unpatriotic.
No, I mean, I think that it's interesting. The perspective on whether $20 is a lot or a little has to do with how we control our appetites. We humans are want machines, and there's this little thing called the hedonic treadmill, meaning that the more we get used to consuming, the more we want. And if you are not very aware and self-conscious or conscious of asking yourself the kinds of questions that you just mentioned, it's very easy to just keep consuming beyond a point that is necessary or sustainable even. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation. Answering the basic question in my podcast is I want to have the conversation in my podcast. Answering the basic question, how much is enough and what do I need, is not something most people do. They're just like, I can afford it or not. I have access to the cash to buy it, whether it's mine or not. So why not buy it?
I don't understand that, but I think a lot of people do, and they live that way.
Some of my own spending is, on one level, a desire to address the deprivations that I felt I had as a kid. I still want that Atari 2600. At the same time, my father's example of not being an a-hole with his money, I think it was a very good example to see as a child.
we grew up in a fairly prosperous time in this country, and it's still relatively prosperous, although not like it was. That was a very wealthy time that we grew up in a sense that there was plenty of jobs, it seemed like, and people spent and they bought nice stuff, and which is fine. But I always wonder, it never really made me feel that great to have something. Although now that there is this, and I've experienced this, the little buzz of that, Amazon package coming to the house, even if it's nothing, it's like, oh, there's my,
Somebody loves me.
yeah. It's like, oh, look, it's a gift.
Jeff Bezos loves me.
He does. He really does.
I think for me, the biggest thing about buying stuff is I feel like a sucker. I feel like a sap. I feel like when they shoot those ads to me on the computer, I fall for it, and it makes me feel weak and dumb, and I don't like that. And I still fall for it even after all these lessons over and over and over. Anytime I get fed some ad of something I may have watched a YouTube video on by accident at times, all of a sudden I'll get an ad for this thing, and I'm like, do I need a blow-up chair? I fall for it. I absolutely fall for advertising, and I feel it kills my self-worth when I end up buying something based on an ad I saw. What thing makes someone happy, except unless you've had this dream guitar or something like that you're going to make something with, and then you get it. I could see that thing bringing you some joy and happiness, but nothing on Amazon.
Yeah, well, that's like an item that you'll use over decades. And be creative with that I totally get, because it has to do with some artistic personal passion, which is fantastic. When you were talking about ads, they make me angry. They've always made me angry. I feel like, don't try to talk me into stuff. I got it. I'm aware of what I need and what I don't need. And I don't need you trying to convince me of this stuff.
Absolutely. All of it makes me angry. When I walk into a grocery store now and I recognize that end caps are to lure you into buying that thing that they got cheaper, and they're trying to move units, I'm angry at that. Yeah, I am. I can't listen to talk radio at all because I'm convinced my mattress sucks and my teeth are. I'm very serious. Every time I hear the ads, I'm like, are my teeth bad like that? Or do I need a new mattress? And I've fallen for shit on talk radio. I bought a $400 air purifier like 10 years ago, and it's stupid. It's just stupid. It's a stupid thing that's on the floor of my bedroom, and I look at it, and I'm like, I fell for that. Like, I listened to somebody talking about how much better the air is in their house.
Next time you come over, Mike, you can dunk your tortillas in my ranch dressing fountain that I bought. Now's a pretty good time for me to remind you guys that I made my money selling internet advertising. So,
well, that's right, you did.
I feel both guilty and fantastic all at the same time.
Well, there's you served a purpose to a lot of people, and you'd probably be, living in a hovel if it was up to me, but luckily the world isn't me. I always think like 99% of the businesses wouldn't even exist because I just don't like a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
About 30 some years ago, I was working up in Seattle, and I was walking around, and I see this coffee place called Starbucks, and they were selling a cup of coffee for like $1.50. And I forget who I was with. I go, that is the stupidest idea I've ever seen in my life. Who's going to spend 3 times what a cup of coffee costs for designer coffee?
Yeah.
That's going to be around about an hour.
But the reason it works is because their coffee is better. And I know a lot of people don't like Starbucks coffee, but if you don't think Starbucks is better than the deli coffee that comes in those Greek cups from the bodega, then your taste buds are broken.
Yeah, right. They filled a need that people didn't even know there was one. Yeah.
It's good to work in a business where your customers start to twitch if they don't buy your product.
Hence the coffee and cigarette stores of the 70s and 80s.
Yeah,
that's right.
Well, there's coffee, cigarettes, and sugar. If you can figure out a new way to put that out there, you're going to be okay.
That's fantastic that you just said that, because there was a store in Pacific Beach that was donuts, coffee, and cigarettes, and I always thought, what a stupid combination. done with coffee and cigarettes.
And they should
But-
have like and cubicles with a TV that you can sit and do those things.
Yeah.
Well, Starbucks really, you're right to say that, Bob, because Starbucks is really in the business of getting people out of the house now, like to try to go someplace to get away from your own thoughts and to have semi-reliable Wi-Fi. It's not just about coffee anymore.
I think Starbucks also got to catch that train that Apple is on, which is it's more of a lifestyle than it is an actual thing.
It's interesting. We're talking about money, and we've segued into talking about companies, corporations, and how they're influencing us.
Like, how McDonald's, their plan of attack, which I don't think is necessarily evil. We would hope to come up with the same kind of idea, but it was to get kids, and I'm one of those kids. When I first got my driver's license, I went to McDonald's because I had gone there as a kid, and French fries, Coke. And I still do that on occasion, and it brings like this weird warmth and this happy childhood memory. And so I'm basically, even though I'm trying to fight it and I don't want to go there, a customer for life.
That's how I feel when I hear REO Speedwagon.
That's right. Exactly.
I'm not sure why.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I think there's something to like 70s rock that takes me back to, like, I don't know, music I heard on the radio when driving with my mom in carpool or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's a nostalgia thing. I think I don't have the same feelings for McDonald's, but you're right. Kids are often used to get parents to open their wallets for stuff that they clearly don't need. That's why candy is at eye level at the grocery checkout.
They prey on, something unfulfilled and a lack of mindfulness, which is, that's the hardest thing to do, is to be sort of centered and aware of everything that's going on and what, that's a hard thing to do all day long. It's exhausting.
Remember the point where we became aware of how casinos were manipulating you? And there was so much psychology in a slot machine paying off at a certain time to keep you there. And it would pay off big now and then, and you'd think it's going to come back, and 90% of people, I mean, the math was all in a book, and I thought it was fascinating about how no matter how big you win, you're going to shove every single quarter back in the machine. And they knew it. So it didn't matter if it paid off because all the money was coming back. And, the psychology is different behind blackjack and behind craps, and the whole idea without the windows or the clocks to keep you confused. And I'm sure every business looks into that kind of thing. Amazon's the king of it now.
Well, I think, Mike, what you're saying kind of comes back to Bob's original question, which is what is money in this case, and how does it affect our behavior? And in that case, money is a tool to feed ourselves dopamine, whether it's shopping, whether it's, hanging out in a casino, or, providing us with chocolate, cigarettes, and caffeine. Money is something we trade for those stimuli. And understanding our relationship and what we're really trying to get at when we make those purchases or go to Vegas, is it necessary? What if I don't get it right now? What if I delay this gratification? And people don't, those questions require discipline that most people don't demonstrate in their own lives.
Like I still just don't want to look at it. I don't want to accept, and I don't want to go like, I don't have the money for this. I'm just not going to pay attention to it. And I don't know if that's just
how is that working out? How is that working?
Yeah, it doesn't work out because it's just an amount of stress that I probably don't have to have in my life.
And that's the typical, I mean, and credit card companies don't want you to think about the long-term ramifications of upping your credit. They don't want you to think about spending less. They want to up your credit limit to the point where you'll take as much of their drug as they can possibly risk letting you take.
I don't understand where the profit comes in on that, though. If you're not going to, if you're just paying the minimum.
Oh, dude, that's exactly where the profits come, because when you pay the minimum, your balance that, they're charging you in some cases 2% a month on gets bigger the next month. And if they think you're never going to pay off your balance, they've only given you, they're charging you 24% a year, and they're borrowing. Their cost of providing that money is maybe 3 or 4%. So their profit margin is gigantic. And it's not a matter of when they're going to get their money. It's not a matter of if they're going to get their money in most cases. It's a matter of when. And if you become too big of a credit risk, they'll sell off your balance at 50 cents on the dollar, and they still are making a profit on it, because that balance is mostly made of interest charges that you've accrued over the years. And very little of it is money that the credit card company actually paid out to some, to McDonald's or Amazon or whomever. So they're making a massive profit.
Plus they get a percentage from the companies that, you buy from. They have to pay the credit card company too.
That's right.
So
God, I just feel dumb. No, well, I do. I mean, I never learned this stuff when I was a kid, and I don't know if it's going to sink in now. And even though we've been working on this for almost a year, like really trying to make changes and stuff, sometimes I feel like I know I've changed, but it just feels like I never paid attention to this.
You didn't, because you were never taught.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're flawed. It just means you were never taught. Now you have a chance to learn it. I think they should teach a lot of this stuff in school. I think this stuff is more important.
Of course. Of course. How about they have a class called Consequences of Having Sex Without a Condom?
I think they do that.
But I mean, that's because no one thinks so. I didn't think of it when I was a kid. I'm like, ooh, this is fun.
They bring in a guy who's gone mad from tertiary syphilis, and
he's got a chain around his neck. They bring
you don't want to wind up like this guy.
Tertiary syphilis, the kind you get on third base. What does that mean?
It's the final stage of syphilis.
Oh God, he looks like a dude from Pirates of the Caribbean. This is what happens if you have sex, kids.
And of course, we assume it's a guy. It could not necessarily be a guy.
Of course, it should be taught. Can you imagine if you're a kid and you're taught responsibility or consequences? How much easier your life would be. And somehow, if you could get it through your head that this is not getting you're not going to feel better by randomly buying stuff. Like, again, going back to the guitar or something that you make something with, or if you're a construction worker, you need tools. That stuff probably is bringing you satisfaction. And it's just this frantic, manic reaching for something, trying to find something. I've done it with shoes to the point where I had 35, 40 pairs of New Balance.
I know there's some people out there that teach this stuff. They make money teaching people about money. I would think that might even be of some value to a lot of people who've never learned it, because there's some basic stuff. It's really about, like they talk about in Debtors Anonymous, what they really talk about is clarity around money. So you have a very clear view of how you see it, what it is.
Can you give an example of that, like what that means in like simple terms?
Well, the simplest thing is you spend less than you make, and
what?
you write down everything that you spend. This is what they do in there. People write it down because it's really easy to kind of forget. Well, it's only $20. It's only $50.
Yeah.
By the end of the week, you're at $1,200 and you make $800 a week. And so, I'm just exaggerating a little bit, but if you're not, so the clarity is, if I'm writing it all down, if I'm, I've got a list of my monthly bills, my necessities, my food, my rent, and then you can work backwards from the necessities, and then you have a category of discretionary income, which is where most people get screwed. They spend way too much on that stuff, and it doesn't leave room for, the necessities and for the future.
How did you teach your kids about money? And I wonder what Paul is going to teach his kids. I know Paul's writing a book about this, about money and, his family and relationships with people about money. But I wonder, like, how you taught what do you tell your daughter when she went off to college?
Well, she kind of got it. She's similar to me,
did you give her a credit card and stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I got her one of those credit cards where, I was responsible for it.
Yeah.
Until she was able to segue into her own credit card. So now she has her own card and her own credit.
But as far as you monitoring it and stuff, you didn't see any weird college activity? Like, what is this?
I don't monitor it. I just let her figure it out, and she's been really good with it.
Do you have a cap on it, or is it just?
Yeah, there's a limit, but she doesn't she's similar to me. She's kind of frugal and very, her goal is to get through college and spend the money on what she needs to do that. She doesn't need a lot of stuff to satisfy herself. She's very driven in a direction that she doesn't want to sway from. Now my other daughter has a debit card in her account, and she kind of came off the rails a little bit, and she went through it really fast. She wasn't paying attention, and it really bothered her when she got to the end there, and it was like $10 in the account.
That's a good experience.
Yeah, she goes, I don't know where it went. I was doing this, and she's generous. She's buys stuff and for other people, and she's and it bothered her enough that she now pays attention.
That's great. That's a cheap way to learn a very valuable lesson that can get you into much bigger trouble later in life.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if this is going to make sense, but a word occurred to me when you were just talking right now, and it was respect. And I don't feel like I respect what money is and that I ever did. And I have a feeling that could be part of my and other people's problem, because I don't look at it as this thing that's not a bad thing or not a good thing. Because sometimes I look at it as it's just a bunch of bull. But I don't look at it as this thing that could be used for good for me. You know what I mean? Like I'll just spend it all and just assume somehow I'm going to make more and screw it. And maybe it's a little bit of resentment and a little bit of thinking money is evil, but I don't respect what money does. Like enough to actually want to sit down and write down how much I spend on this and do this accounting. I kind of just look at it as this evil entity flowing in my life that's binding things together, that I don't address it. I don't look it in the eye and go, oh, this is something that's part of life.
And sounds like you're a little bit afraid to look at it in a different way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, and you've become aware recently of maybe some issues around it, but you're not really willing to yet to look at what about it is so difficult.
Yeah.
And it's actually not as difficult as you think. It's just a retraining, in my opinion.
I'll tell you, one of the most interesting conversations that Paul and I have had is him sort of laying out for me, at least this is how I interpreted it, that money is like more about the bigger picture. How you manage money is how you manage your life, and how you manage your effect, how you deal with things. And it really is a reflection of it. And I remember when I was a kid, a landlord told me I always walk out to everyone's car and I look at their car, and that's how I know they're going to treat the apartment. If their car is full of trash, I know that's how they're going to treat the place they live. And I always thought that was fascinating, but I correlated it with something Paul said to me about how, because you're right, he's right. My refusal or my lack of wanting to responsibly face money is the same. It follows through in all aspects of my life.
There's a whole lot of people out there that have a fear and a misunderstanding of money, and some people feel like they're above money. Some people feel like money is evil and they shouldn't have to do what it takes to build a healthy relationship with it. And there's this amazing book that I read last year called "You Are a Badass at Making Money" by a woman named Jen Sincero. I think it's really applicable to a lot of people like Mike who say, who resent money and who don't want to do what it takes to build a healthy financial life because they feel like they shouldn't have to, or they feel like they don't deserve it almost.
I can relate to both of those. Both of those are correct. I definitely don't feel like I deserve it, and I also resent it.
But not building a healthy relationship with money keeps you in a chaotic state that maybe you want to stay in subconsciously. I don't think people realize how good they will feel when they finally get in control of their financial life. They'll be able to, not dread the call from the credit card company. They'll be able to, look their landlord in the eye because they're paying their bills on time. They'll be able to, they'll be able to ask a person out on a date because they can afford to pay for a date. When you can remove that kind of chaos out of your life, it really makes it better. It's a much more pleasant. I found it was a much more pleasant way to live.
I think you both have taught me that to a level, and I do believe that's completely correct, because of the stress that at least is in my head, and I imagine is in millions of other people's heads. I don't even look at it as stress until it's gone, and I'm like, oh, what a relief. Once, last year when the amount of stress I felt and the amount of tension in my body, I felt like it was going to just break in regards to my IRS situation. And once I got off the phone with them, it almost felt literal, like something was lifting this weight off of me. Like I felt my body just want to collapse with this freedom. And that wasn't even me dealing with the issue straight on. That was just me finding an immediate resolve. But the amount of stress it took off me that I didn't even realize was on me. And I'm sure that's the same for other people with credit cards and stuff. You don't think about it during the day, but then once a month you look and you're like, oh, I owe $6,000 on this credit card. And it's got to be in your brain the entire time you're trying to function throughout life. And I know you've said it and other people have said it, but when you told me like the best stress was paying off your bills and your student loan and stuff, it took a while for that to actually sink in and for me to like absorb it and understand it. But yeah,
when you owe more money than you can see your way through to paying off, you live the life of a victim. You have to make this. You can't quit your job. I mean, well, you did, but you know, most people most people can't quit their job because they have to tolerate a lecherous boss because they are living a life of an economic victim. When you get ahead of your bills, you have the wherewithal to make good decisions for the rest of your life. When you can't move, you're stuck in when you can't afford to move, you're stuck in a shitty school system. When you can't afford to quit, you're stuck in a job that underutilizes your capabilities. You know, like being able to, if you have 3 months expenses in the bank, you have a ton more flexibility than somebody that doesn't know how they're going to buy lunch tomorrow or pay their rent next month. You just do. You can live a more self-directed life.
Yeah, I sort of look at it like, you know, we have our physical health, you know, that we can maintain by eating properly and exercising. And then there's the mental health, which is, you know, being around people that are good for us, reading positive stuff, spiritual health. And then, you know, there's financial health. And people don't sort of look at it a lot of times like there's a healthy or unhealthy way to do this stuff. And how do you stay healthy physically? Well, you take the time to do these exercises. You become aware of the food that you're eating. It's the same way with money. And, you know, it's like you basically get three things when you're born, which is an unknown amount of time, hopefully a healthy body, and some sort of an inner spirit or soul or whatever. So your only three questions are, how do I spend my time? How do I take care of my body? And how do I nurture my spirit? And you can do that with all the categories in life, is how I kind of look at it. It's like, well, I work out, I do that, but I don't look at my financial situation as a health issue, which I think Paul was just really talking about.
I almost think the question about money and happiness should be more along the lines of, does money make you unhappy? Because the debt, the not knowing how to pay your bills, that stress can probably relate directly to anxiety and depression.
Absolutely.
For some people. And
so it's a weight. It's a heavy weight.
It is absolutely a weight. And more so than once I get ahead, is it going to make me happy if I've got a ton of money in the bank? I think the bigger issue for most people is, how is this ruining? I heard a guy say he was very depressed and very anxiety ridden, and someone told him, why don't you go lose 10 pounds? Like just to get him off their back. And he did. And he goes, and I just looked in the mirror and went, I can't believe this stupid thing actually helped. And that rings in my ears all the time, like a little simple thing like that. And I think the money thing sort of relates to that.
The comparison makes a ton of sense because both require delayed gratification. You know, you can't lose the weight if you're going to have 5 Twinkies tonight. And you can't get ahead of your bills if you're going to buy everything that you see on Amazon. And so you have to believe that you can change and give yourself the time to let that change manifest. And this goes back to the way Bob started the conversation, which is past a certain point, you don't get the same thrill from more money, because when you're going from being a victim to being your own person, that is euphoric. That is a change in your identity. And it's not the same thing when you go from BMW to Ferrari. I mean, I guess,
Yeah.
it doesn't, it's not an existential kind of improvement. It's an aesthetic improvement.
Oh God, I have work to do.
In what way?
When somebody presents a solution to a problem to you, it's not, you want it to be like, take a pill, easy peasy, go away fast. And I mean, we've had this experience together many times, but I mean, I'm like, oh yeah, there is work to do. I need to face things more. I need to look at numbers. I need to do this. I need to, because I take 2 steps forward and then I take a step back, and it's not even a whole step back, but go for 2 weeks of eating very reasonably and saving money, and then one day I'm just like, fuck it.
Have you ever been in a situation where you're about to say fuck it, and then you just go, you know what, I'm not going to do this thing, this impulse, and see what happens, see how I feel?
Had it forced upon me by accident. I've gone to an ice cream shop to get a milkshake and had somebody call me and say, can I talk to you for a few minutes? And I walk outside and talk for half an hour, and then the milkshake place on Ventura closes, and I'm like, you know what, I didn't want that milkshake at 10:30 at night anyway. And it's a pretty good feeling.
Oh, so your experience when you don't indulge the impulse is not, it's actually a positive one.
Well, I've gotten up, putting on pants and a shirt to go to Taco Bell at midnight, and then laid down on my bed for a minute and fell asleep for an hour and a half, and then thought, I can't go at 1:30, and just went back to bed. And the next morning I was like, I'm really glad I didn't go to Taco Bell at midnight.
Which is why Taco Bell now delivers.
That's what I'm saying, you guys.
There's removing friction from the transaction process.
It's such a weird, it's hard to deal with this mentally, because you feel like you're being taken advantage of. Then we also live in a free market where you're allowed to do this kind of stuff, and it just feels like people are zeroing in on other people's weaknesses and taking.
Well, they are. They are.
But then
it's your choice to let it happen or not let it happen.
Yeah.
I was reading this. This is a Steve Martin quote. I thought it'd be good to do here. I love money. I love everything about it. I bought some pretty good stuff. Got me a $300 pair of socks. Got a fur sink, an electric dog polisher, a gasoline-powered turtleneck sweater, and of course, I bought some dumb stuff too. I love that. I love that quote.
That's
kind of what we're talking about.
It's not easy to land a station wagon out at the airport.
Money never made a man happy yet, nor will it. The money a man has, the more the man has, the more he wants. Instead of filling a vacuum, it makes one. That's Benjamin Franklin. So these questions have been around a long time, haven't they?
It's such a powerful force at the center of everything, and it's so mysterious to people like me that never studied it or learned about it, and you feel like you're so ridiculously outsmarted and outclassed by people that know about it.
I think if you were just a little bit taller, none of this would be a problem.
You know what? Yeah, exactly.
And it's hard to move through the world and be different than the way a lot of people are. It's sort of a constant awareness and I don't want to say battle, but it kind of is.
I do think it's hard to resist, and social media certainly doesn't make it worse. We human beings tend to evaluate our happiness based on a relative position in the world as opposed to our absolute position in the world. And social media normalizes, the bling lifestyle. And so some kid who's doing okay, his parents are doing okay, doesn't compare himself to the poor kid in Africa. He compares himself to Kim Kardashian and, feels deprived on a relative basis. And that's why 16-year-olds go off and buy Lamborghinis, apparently. Right, Mike?
Yeah. I mean, it almost seems like the most transparent game I've ever witnessed in my life. I'm sure it's always been around, but it just seems like such an obvious pile of bullshit. I can't think about that kind of stress that people are feeling like I need to literally keep up with the Kardashians. Perfect name. But because mine goes back to more like, what am I doing with my life, and how do I find some clarity and get some peace? And I think the money issue has a lot to do with it, because I don't want to look at it, and I don't want to look at other things.
What's interesting though, Mike, is like you're a person, you've been sober for how long now? 8 years?
7 years. 7 years.
Okay, so you had the wherewithal and fortitude to give up on booze.
Well, I had help.
Well, of course you did, but you're also having help. I mean, you've got help with some of your money issues
Yeah.
also, but
Yeah.
it's almost like it's more challenging than giving up alcohol. I mean,
It might be.
A little bit of a difference is that you can be completely abstinent off of alcohol. Money you need to earn and spend to survive. So it's part of your, you don't just put it to the side.
Yeah, when you say the word money, in my brain, a very
Right.
small part of it still recoils a little bit. I don't want to talk about this. It's like, oh gosh, I just want it, and I don't want to have to deal with it. And I know that's a key ingredient to being the kind of person that gets taken advantage of.
What do you think your life would be like, Mike, if all your debts were paid and you had a steady income of $10,000 a month? Like what, how, would you do anything differently today than you did 2 years ago if that was all of a sudden your situation?
Wow.
I'm not making an offer, by the way.
I do think I'll take that offer. Thanks. I got to go. Bye. Verbal contract. See you in court. My mindset has changed for a lot of reasons over the past 5, 6, 7 years, but especially the last year, like how I view things, how I perceive things, how I break down my brain telling me wrong information. So I think I would enjoy that life more than I did in the past when I was making close to that and I was manic and frantic all the time, because it seems to me like, as far as creating things, whatever I'm working on, if it's a project, if it's the podcast, if it's music, whatever it is, I seem to be much more open and free and enjoy making something, no matter what it is, even if it's cleaning my living room, when I feel safe and I feel that feeling of, oh, I know where money's coming from next month and I don't have debt. In regards to your question, I feel like I would be freer to make things, but that might not be true. It's just the feeling I have. It's just my, there's everything for me is this is a bad time. Everything is that. Oh, there's a bad time. You want to have coffee. There's a bad time. And it's not a bad time. It's just like, there is no good time. In my head, in my the way my brain works. And I thought, when is a good time for me to do things? You know when it is? I have $50 million in the bank. I have no obligations, no commitments. That's a good time for me to go have coffee with you. Other than that, it's a bad time.
I like your strategy. I think we should just wait until you have $50 million before you start making prudent
That's
decisions.
my perception, is I need to have this huge pad that's unspendable for me, and everything needs to be perfectly aligned for me to go do something simple.
Yeah, that scenario is never going to happen, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, what I mean by that is it's never going to happen that X number of dollars down the road, well, not today.
Yeah.
Is going to make you, once I get X, Y, Z, I'm going to be fine.
Yep. And
then I can start living the way I want to live.
Yep. And I could name drop mutual friends and famous people that we both know that have told me flat out, once I have this, you will never see me again and I'm going to be fine. And they got that, and they're as miserable as they were back in the old. Well,
That's comforting.
It's true. No, but it's true.
It is. Yeah, it can be.
And the one person I'm talking about, I'm not going to mention him, but he just will constantly talk about, once I get this, I'm done. Everyone can kiss my ass. And he went way over that amount, and he still is the grumpiest, crabbiest, most unpleasant person.
Are you talking about me? I'm on the call.
Oh my God, Paul Ollinger.
I don't think it's you.
No, it's not. I haven't gone over that.
I think I know who it is. I think
I know who it is.
There is some comfort in knowing that somebody you don't really care for is miserable.
Exactly. Maybe it's Schadenfreude. And thank God he's miserable. And if I ever find out he's happy, I will personally drive up there and do something to make sure he goes back into that pit.
I'm feeling like we really covered a lot of good ground here today in a fun way. Also, I think a lot of people don't even are like you, Mike. They don't want to even talk about money.
This is hard. It's hard because you have to face the truth. And the truth is, I don't know about handling money. And the even worse truth to face is I don't want to know how to handle money, even though I know I have to. It's like going in for surgery or something. You need to have this taken care of or you're going to die. And I'm like, I don't want to. I don't want to face it. I don't want to go in there and let someone cut me open to take something out. I don't want to face it. And you almost would rather just let it take its course than have to face it. And it's hard.
Which is harder, to continue in a way that's making you distressed?
I'd say the answer is obvious. That it's much easier to be honest because it takes a weight off your shoulders. It lifts your self-esteem, all this stuff. But facing it, you just want to run away from it. It's it's like a breakup. It's like I know I should break up with her. We don't like each other. We make each other miserable, and you let it drag on for years and years and years. When if you would have had the courage up front just to look at it and break up, you both could have gone on to have better life. I don't know if it's lack of courage. I don't know if it's fear, but it's a great feeling when you deal with something. And like my IRS explanation before is kind of a dumb example because I didn't pay the bill. I just dealt with it with somebody on the phone. But the relief I felt, I honestly felt like I wanted to put on running shoes and go out and just run down the street, like with joy, not to run away, but I wanted to get outside and just breathe. And it was just, oh my God, I'm not going to jail.
They don't like to put people in jail. They just want their money. So what are you going to do about it?
I'm taking steps, man. And it's not, I can't say it's unpleasant, but it's scary. It's very scary. And right this moment, at this point, I'm pretty different from a year ago. And I think you know
Absolutely.
that.
You definitely are.
But it's still not 100%. And I beat myself up for not being 100%, for not having this moment where I just went, everything changes now. It's been slight, but it's been true at least.
Well, Paul's been kind of a mentor to you, hasn't he?
Absolutely. He's been,
Yeah.
he's been, if it wasn't for the opportunity he gave me by giving me money to make a film that I haven't finished yet, I was miserable in my old situation. And not to mention the fact that my old job, after being away from it for 6 to 7 months, I kind of realized the problem really wasn't them. The problem was me. No, but it's not a pleasant, because I've had so much animosity and so much bitterness. I'm like, these idiots, I hate these people. That went on for 30 years. I was difficult because I thought I was always right. And I could have not always been right and still got my way and not been difficult and not made myself miserable. And I'm not sorry that I'm not there anymore, because I overstayed my welcome by a long, long, long time. And you kind of, I felt like a guy that got stuck in a job and he was too scared to quit. And then I realized I do have the freedom of not having a family to provide for. So it's not too late. Because if I had to pay a mortgage and I had a wife and 2 kids, I couldn't just go like, I'm going to leave here and go make a movie. Paul is absolutely responsible for facilitating that.
Sounds like you're blaming me.
I'm going to give him all these blank hard drives in my will in case something happens to me. Lord willing, and the creek don't rise.
Do you have a will?
No, I'm aware of how dumb that is, because after my sister died, everyone was like, what do we do with this stuff? What do we do with this? What do we do with it? And my dad has openly talked about how, I don't have anything.
I can't even tell you how important it is for you guys to try to fix that, because it is going to be
he did
total cluster if he dies.
It was her death that made him realize I don't have a will. I just kind of assumed he did, but he doesn't. But he's also this, he's an old school guy that doesn't trust anybody.
You're an interesting person, Mike.
Thank God. It's the worst thing would be to be me and a bore.
This has sort of been like a combination of talking about money and a therapy session, which I really like. I feel like an armchair therapist right here today.
Well, if you want to feel like that more, I'm heading to therapy right now, and I videotape all my sessions, so I can shoot you some videos if you want to see me crying.
I don't.
Does your therapist sign the release?
Oh my God, that's funny you would say that. No.
Why is that funny? She needs to sign it.
No, I know. I keep forgetting. I'm glad you said that.
All that footage is worthless if she doesn't sign the release. This is the same problem. This is a discipline issue.
Yeah, it's all a discipline issue. I'm aware. I know that.
We could actually, if she doesn't sign the release, you could do like pixel out her face. And
you're videotaping the therapist or yourself?
Both. I put a camera in the side, a wide angle lens on the side of the room, and I videotape the whole thing.
Is this for the movie?
It is for the movie.
Does the camera affect
No,
how you
no.
you just forget about it completely. It doesn't
I
affect.
truly forget about it, and if I see it, sometimes I make mention of it. I go, I'm not saying this because the camera's right there, and then I go right back into it. And I've had the biggest sessions with the camera running.
I'm not myself if I'm not being documented, honestly.
All right, let's end it now soon. Like in
Cool.
the next. So Paul, thank you so much. Plug your podcast because it's brand new and we want people to listen to it.
Thanks. The name of the podcast is Crazy Money with Paul Ollinger, and Ollinger is Ollinger. And with our first guests were Dr. Drew Pensky, Jessica Ma, who's a 28-year-old CEO, co-founder of a company who's had quite an adventure. And coming up, we have Ron Lieber from the New York Times and Ed Roland, lead singer of Collective Soul.
Man, good guess. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Mike
luck with
Carano
that.
will also be on a future episode.
Great. And Mike, say your podcast again.
Miscellaneous. You can just punch in Mike Carano onto iTunes. How about
okay. That's what I'll do.
Thank you, Bob. Thank
right,
you, Paul.
thanks,
I got to
guys.
run. I am late.
Bye, Mike.
I will talk to you guys later. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for listening to the Exploding Human podcast. I'm Bob Nickman. I hope you come back and check us out again. Been a pleasure.